Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really jumping into something that's moving incredibly fast. We're looking at the storm in modern geopolitics right now. The recent military strikes, the diplomatic tensions, missile attacks. It involves Iran, the U.S., and Israel. So our mission here really is to cut through all the noise. We want to unpack what just happened, look at the global ripple effects, and we're already seeing them, explore the diplomacy going on behind the scenes, and crucially, try to figure out the risks and where this might all be heading. It's a very fluid moment. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding a situation that's, reshaping things quickly. We're drawing on the latest news, statements straight from the key players, and of course, expert analysis to piece this together for you. Okay, so let's unpack this. It really kicked off just days ago, right? June 22nd, 2025. We saw the United States and Israel launch these precision strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities.
That's right. And precision is the key word here. These weren't, broad bombing campaigns. They used specific weapons, these bunker buster bombs, designed to hit deeply buried targets.
Right, those fortified underground sites.
Exactly. And the targets were very specific too. Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan.
Maybe quickly remind listeners why those sites are significant.
Sure. Fordo is infamous for being deep underground, a once secret enrichment site. Natanz is really their main uranium enrichment facility.
Yeah.
And Isfahan, that's where key nuclear conversion activities happen. So hitting these three is, it's significant.
And the stated aim, they said, was what exactly?
The publicly stated aim was very clear. Disable the nuclear program. They explicitly said it was not about toppling the Iranian government.
Okay. And Iran's reaction? Predictably strong, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Swift and severe, just as you'd expect. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and other top officials, they immediately put out these stern warnings. They talked about irreparable consequences, making it clear they'd react strongly, especially if the U.S. got more involved.
And they didn't wait long.
No, not at all. Early hours of June 23rd, the retaliation began. Missile launches targeting Israeli cities. Tel Aviv, Haifa were mentioned. And crucially, they also went after U.S. assets. Bases in Qatar, including the big air hub at Al Udeid, and positions in Iraq.
Wow. So hitting both Israel and the U.S. directly.
Yes. And what's also critical is that almost at the same time, Israel ramped up its own airstrikes inside Iran, hitting places like Evin Prison, which is, notorious for holding political prisoners in compounds belonging to the Revolutionary Guard.
So striking back at symbols of power and the military structure itself.
Exactly. Hitting the heart of the regime's military and, you could say, ideological core.
So beyond these initial strikes and counterstrikes, you mentioned the global ripple effects. It feels like that's really central here. What's the clearest sign this isn't just staying contained in the region?
We'll host. Look at Qatar. Their immediate decision to just shut down their airspace and rush out evacuation warnings for foreign nationals. That's incredibly telling. That signals deep, deep concern right there on the ground.
Yeah, that's a huge move.
It is. But beyond that, the international reaction has been really fast and, interestingly, quite unified in its calls for calm. You've got Europe, the UK, the EU, Russia, China, all urging restraint, holding emergency meetings, and warning this could easily spiral way out of control.
So everyone sees the danger here.
Absolutely. This is not just a regional spat, it's a global flashpoint.
And tied into that global impact, the economy, oil prices shot up, 21 to 25% higher?
That's right, a significant jump.
But you mentioned something interesting earlier. It's not necessarily about oil barrels immediately going offline. Can you unpack that? What's driving those prices?
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. The immediate fear isn't so much a supply crunch because a facility got hit. It's the anxiety, the palpable anxiety about potential disruption to major energy arteries.
Okay, like the Strait of Hormuz?
Exactly like the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, something like a fifth of the world's daily oil supply passes through there. And the Red Sea shipping lanes, too.
So it's the vulnerability of the whole system.
Precisely. It's not just about current supply levels. It's about the fear that these critical choke points could be disrupted or even closed. That's what spooks the market.
And Iran's own warnings seem to play into that, right?
They do. Iran has explicitly warned that if Washington intervenes further, the global economy and global politics could really suffer. It's a clear signal from them saying, hey, the consequences of this go far beyond our borders.
It's fascinating, though, that even with missiles flying and these stark warnings, there's still this diplomatic track churning away. We're seeing different messages, even within the U.S. President Trump called the strikes peacemaking, aimed at disarmament, maybe talks down the line. But Congress seems split. Some Republicans supporting it, Many Democrats raising serious concerns, even questioning the constitutionality without their approval. What does that internal U.S. division tell us?
Well, it signals a pretty deep disagreement, doesn't it? Even within the same administration and political system, there isn't a unified view on how to handle Iran. It shows the complexity and the risks involved.
And from the Iranian side, are they entertaining any talks?
Not publicly, not yet.
Yeah.
Officials like Foreign Minister Arachi have been quite firm. Their line is basically no talks until the attacks stop. Ceasefire first.
Right.
But, and this is what's really interesting, despite all the tough talk and the military action, those diplomatic channels are still being used. You had a UN IAEA meeting called pretty quickly. They're trying to assess potential radiation leaks, check on Iran's claims they moved nuclear material beforehand.
So verification efforts are still happening.
Yes. And diplomats from the EU, UK, China, Pakistan, others, they are still pushing, trying to broker ceasefire discussions.
It suggests maybe a desperate hope to avoid total breakdown?
I think so. It shows that even amidst the conflict, there's a recognition of how catastrophic a wider war would be, and they're trying to keep some lines open.
So where does that leave us now? What comes next? We're hearing about significant military posturing, U.S. carriers, warships moving. What does that signal?
It signals we're right on the edge. The region is, at a precipice. The naval movements are a clear show of force and readiness.
And Iran has laid out its own potential next steps, its escalation points.
Oh, very clearly. And they're serious. There's the explicit threat to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. We just talked about the economic impact of that. It would be massive.
The global economic shockwave.
Absolutely. And then there's the talk of potentially withdrawing from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT.
Which would be huge geopolitically.
Enormous. It would essentially remove Iran from the main international framework overseeing nuclear programs. A major, major shift.
And it's not just Iran itself, right? There are the proxies.
That's a critical piece. These non-state actors, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi militants in Yemen, Iranian-backed militias in Iraq, they've all started making noise. Veiled threats basically saying if the U.S. jumps into this conflict directly, they might get involved more widely.
And that makes things even less predictable.
Much less predictable. These groups operate outside traditional state command structures, to some extent. Their involvement could really ignite conflicts across multiple fronts, making it incredibly difficult to contain.
Okay, so Iran has its threats, the proxies are making noise. What about the U.S. position now? What are the red lines?
The U.S. message seems to be twofold. One, they made it very clear they will protect their forces in the region and their Israeli allies. That's unambiguous. Two, they're framing these initial strikes as sort of temporary or limited, but they've coupled that with a warning. If Iran continues aggressive actions, more U.S. action could follow.
So it's a mix of trying to signal limited intent, but also maintaining the threat of escalation. That seems volatile.
Extremely volatile. It creates this situation where miscalculation on either side is a huge, huge risk.
You have the U.S. trying to de-escalate, but on its own terms, while Iran is trying to assert its power, push back.
Exactly. And that's why this feels like more than just another military clash. It's testing the entire global system. Remember the oil price spike?
Yeah.
We said it wasn't just missing barrels.
Right. It was the fear.
It's the fear of the whole region potentially collapsing and the far-reaching consequences that would have for the global economy. And you see the diplomatic pressure intensifying from Russia, the EU, the UN, China, and India are also weighing in, urging restraint. Everyone's watching this nervously.
When you connect this to the bigger historical picture, some analysts are already saying this is potentially the most significant Middle East conflict since, the 2003 Iraq War?
That comparison is being made, yes.
Yeah.
And it really forces us to think about the impact on broader global alliances and partnerships.
How so?
Well, this is the kind of crisis that puts immense strain on existing relationships. Think about NATO, for instance. How does it respond? Or consider the axis of resistance, that network, including Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, various militias. Does this strengthen their resolve or expose fractures?
Right. And the U.S.-Israel partnership itself.
That too. This event could either solidify that partnership further or create new tensions, depending on how things unfold and what choices are made. So it really raises a fundamental question for you, the listener. How might these long-standing partnerships, these global structures, actually evolve or even fragment under this kind of pressure?
It could be a moment that either forces groups together or pulls them apart.
Exactly. The stakes feel incredibly high, extending far beyond the immediate region, far beyond the battlefields themselves.
So that brings us towards the end of this particular deep dive. We've walked through this really intricate web, the initial strikes, the swift retaliation, the economic tremors, the diplomatic maneuvering happening even now. It's a complex picture, still very much unfolding. So maybe here's something to think about as you go through your day. Given everything we've discussed, the military actions, the fear rippling through global markets, these deep diplomatic divides, what does the specific escalation suggest about the future? Are we looking at a path towards renewed stability somehow? Or does this signal a period of deeper fragmentation in international relations well beyond just the Middle East? Something to ponder. We'll certainly be watching closely and we'll be back to unpack more as this story develops.